It was in December of 1978 that I found that I had a couple of spots on my left lung. I arrived at the Norfolk Norwich Hospital on a Friday morning at 9 o'clock, and I was out of his office by 9:15 with an envelope to go to the Charing Cross Hospital in Fulham Palace Road, 10 o'clock Monday mornings. They had some new treatment there which was quite revolutionary, and he thought I was a suitable candidate for that type of treatment. And that was my first encounter with the idea that there was something seriously wrong with me. Train journeys were a big part of chemotherapy treatment that I had at Charing Cross. There's no question about that. Every time I get on the train, I'm flashing back to those days in 1978 and 79 when I was going to London for treatment.
This is the story of Norfolk's cancer charity. 35 years of Big C.
Your hair starts to fall out and your energy levels drop, and so each treatment is wearing you down, basically. And I've often said to people afterwards that, you know, whilst the treatment was pretty grim and unpleasant, the travelling backwards and forwards was equally hard, and if not, that was the thing that was killing me, basically. One particular time coming back, I remember in the underground, I fell over, and actually people walked over me. And I decided that I would never, ever go down and use the underground again. So that's a vivid memory I'll never forget. Still very difficult. I always use a taxi. It's surprising how it has affected me in that respect. Being here is in hospital in London, away from all your friends, away from your family and such like, you're on your own. So you are very isolated as far as that's concerned, and there are no support team here, apart from the brilliant medical team that you have, but there are no friends. Having had 8 or 9 days of chemotherapy, obviously body is very weak, and there's only one thing you actually want to do, and that's get home and sleep in your own bed. And you know, realising that, hey, you're not 110%, you're not fully fit, but you've actually got to make that journey across London, which is like an epic journey. It's like climbing a mountain to some extent. And then you've got that second mountain to climb, which is that train journey home. It was very difficult, and I could never actually put into enough words how it felt and how traumatic it was. Into early February of 1979, I met another patient from Norfolk, a chap called Clive Bamford. And I remember one wet February afternoon, turned to him and I said, if I ever get out of this place, I'm going to try and do something to make sure other people shouldn't have to do what we're actually doing. It was an off-the-cuff remark, and it wasn't until 9 months later that he rang me up one day and he said, you remember what you said in London? And you know, it sort of really made me think. We thought we'd raise a few £1,000s just to improve and say thank you to the Norfolk Norwich Hospital, and we had no idea where it was actually going to lead.
The Big C Appeal was founded in September 1980, and in a year had raised £60,000 and began funding cancer research with Dr. Ian Gibson, starting a long-term relationship between the charity and cancer research at the University of East Anglia. In 1983, £750,000 was raised to open a new cancer care unit at the old Norfolk and Norwich Hospital. By 1985, the appeal had raised £1 million. In the years that followed, the charities bought more life-saving equipment, helped to fund the arrival of leading cancer experts into Norfolk, and opened support centres in Norwich, Great Yarmouth, Gorleston and King's Lynn. "35 years on, Big C has raised nearly £25 million. 2,000 people support the charity every year through fundraising events, donations and legacies. And it's all made possible by a team of over 300 volunteers and staff. It funds research into cancer. It supports people living with cancer and their families, and it helps to pay for life-saving equipment at Norfolk's hospitals, and that keeps care closer to home. Just as David and Clive hoped, more patients are now able to get access to cutting-edge technology and treatment on their doorstep. Big C has funded equipment like this, a Mohs machine, which is used to treat skin cancer.
It is actually all down to the Big C that we have Mohs surgery in Norwich. The skin comes to the lab, it's processed, it's cut into very thin slices by one of the machines here. And then once that's been done, it's then stained and put onto slides, and then the slides are examined under a microscope.
Getting access to Mohs surgery means patients no longer have to travel for treatment or undergo more invasive procedures with a long wait for results.
Before 2008, we would either have to refer patients to Cambridge or to London, or we had to use conventional surgery, and basically it was a best guess as to where the tumour was and how much of a margin of normal skin that we had to remove. And we just had to hope for the best that when we got the result back a week later that we had removed the tumour, and sometimes we hadn't.
There's also great progress in research at the University of East Anglia and the Research Park, making Norwich a world leader in cancer research.
Without Big C, we would be in the wilderness. Certainly here in Norwich, there would be a lack of cancer research activity, a lack of progress being made. There's been dramatic changes, the incredible explosion of technology that has happened in terms of genome technologies. This is the ability to sequence DNA and to gather information from DNA, both from patients and their individual tumours. And what we're seeing is now the beginning of a revolution which will lead to what we call personalised medicine, where cancer patients will start to be treated on the basis of the particular genetic changes that have happened in their tumours and tracked over time as their treatments respond and how the cancer then finds ways to escape those treatments and then new strategies put in place afterwards. This will all be tracked using genetic information.
As well as its investment in science, they also support those diagnosed with cancer and their families on a much more personal level. In 2006, the charity opened the Big C Centre within the grounds of the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. It has around 12,000 visits from people every year.
This centre and our centres at King's Lynn and Great Yarmouth and our work in the Louise Hamilton Centre is really about holistic care. It's looking at the whole person.
We first met shortly after I was diagnosed.
That was back in
August
when she was diagnosed.
Last year.
The second time we met was actually here, and by accident we just ended up coming in for the day,
And we just got chatting
and became really good friends. I think when I first was diagnosed, I knew nobody that had been diagnosed, and I didn't know where that support was going to come from. And I think when I first walked in here, I just instantly realised there was people I could talk to outside of the hospital environment that would answer my questions, that would sit there while I cried, would sit there just to give me a tissue. And I think that's invaluable. And when you meet other people, you really get to discuss other people's situations, and it makes you realise you're not alone.
If I think back to actually how we used to look after patients, we actually didn't have anywhere to send them. Everything had to be done in that department, and then people just had to go home. And so what I think the big difference that Big C has made is this is an oasis where people can come, but it's also an area of specialism where people can get information and psychological and social support that they desperately need.
I used the centre on a regular basis when I was going through my treatment. So I would visit before appointments and have a cup of tea. After appointments, we would meet here for a coffee, wouldn't we?
For me, it's probably made my treatment and life just go a lot smoother. The nurses can only give you so much knowledge, and so when you are amongst the Big C and amongst people that really understand, it just makes you feel like you're not alone and in a world that people can relate to you. I think people who feel that their cancer isn't bad enough or that they've got they're too wealthy to bother coming in. It's support for everybody, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of everything.
There's been lots of progress made since 1980, but for Norfolk's cancer charity, their work has only just begun.
I think everyone understands on the Norwich Research Park in relation to Big C that without Big C's support we wouldn't have cancer research carried out here to the extent that it is. We're really at the forefront of international research here in a number of areas. And without funding from the Big C, none of this would have happened. But looking to the future, we've got to build on this and make everything world-class so we can benefit patients who are being treated at the Norfolk and Waveney University Hospital.
Our plan for the future is to develop 5 commitments of understanding, and those are going to be around increasing the services we provide in the community, increasing the amount of money we spend into research, increasing the money we invest into diagnostic equipment, increasing the profile of our shops in the communities around Norfolk and Waveney, and finally developing an educational programme in schools, colleges and universities.
35 years since the charity first began, it's time to thank everyone who helps make it all possible. From the volunteers working in the charity shops to the scientists working in the labs carrying out Big C funded research. As for David, he beat cancer, helped transform cancer support in Norfolk, and founded a charity that's raised millions to support those affected by cancer and the experts trying to cure it.
I really wouldn't believe it was possible, but it has, and it is changing lives and changing people's lives. And who knows, in a few years' time we may be able to cure cancer far more effectively and easily than we have done without having the treatment that I endured. Sometimes I think we all have a purpose in this world, and I think maybe I was ill to, and maybe Clive was ill to actually create Big C as it is today. As I say, we'd never dreamt that it would be the organisation that it is today, and that's quite mind-boggling.